Hello, everyone. I'm Bill Raggio. I'm a senior fellow at Foundation for Defense of Democracies and editor of FDD's Long War Journal. This is Generation Jihad, the podcast that covers all things in what used to be known as the global war on terror, but we now call the Long War. Today, my new co-host for the Wednesday shows, it's Will Selbert. Will is a retired Middle East foreign affairs officer, a military fellow at the Bulwark, and host of the podcast Shoulder to Shoulder, Untold Stories from a Forgotten War, and also the podcast Stories from My Brothers, Tales of the Afghan Security Forces. Will, glad to get you on as a co-host. What do you think Captain Will Selbert would have said about this?
He's fainted. I gave him a call. I said, stand up. This is really happening, bro. He's like, oh my goodness. No, I'm thrilled to be a part of this great podcast. I've listened to it. So I'm thrilled, and thank you so much for the opportunity. And yeah, I mean, it's not always a pleasant conversation, but it's conversations that have to happen.
That's you know what I mean. Really, that should be our tagline. This isn't a pleasant conversation, but one we have to have and one you need to hear. No, Will, look, you've earned it. I've gotten to know you over the last couple of months. Did our first podcast, and I was like, I got to get him right back on the show. Then we did our second podcast. Then we got Sammy, and I'm like, I was convinced. Really, I knew that before we got Sammy that we were going to, make you be a regular. And I really had to twist the arm just a little bit to get you to join. But I'm really happy to make it happen. You're going to fill a nice big hole that we've had here. We spent a lot of time the last, obviously for understandable reasons, covering the Israel conflict in the Middle East, and rightfully so. And you and I will be covering that as well. But, getting you on full time will get us to focus on some other issues, Afghanistan and the Sunni jihadist issues that, admittedly have, taken a back seat. But we've had a lot develop in the last couple of months, particularly in the last month or two, that have, safe idols, call for people to come to Afghanistan to train, the uptick in Islamic State attacks, what's happening in West Africa. So we got a lot to cover, Will, a lot of ground.
They're getting the band back together. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's not that it went away. No. They're retouring. That's what I like to say.
Exactly. Yeah. This tour, it's an explosive tour they got going on. So yeah, but we got to cover it. So
absolutely.
Will, let's jump in it today. Today, we're going to take our time and focus on an article written at, where was this? Foreign Affairs. Thanks, Will. Yeah. Title of the article: Israel's War of Regime Change is Repeating America's Mistakes. It's written by David Petraeus, former CIA director, the head of CENTCOM and U.S. Forces of Afghanistan, and also Iraq. Yeah, right. Boy, those were the days, right? Yeah. And co-written with Megan O'Sullivan and Richard Fontaine. And the tagline on it is, but Israel can still learn from America's successes. So the article goes in, I'll briefly summarize it and we'll go into detail here. Talks about, how Israel is failing in its fight, and it basically needs to wage a counterinsurgency against Hamas and in Gaza. I'm going to start here. Will, you would agree that's pretty much what we're doing?
That's basically, it's basically why don't you learn from what we did in Iraq and then just take that and then just do it over here.
Exactly.
Next door.
And
we're here the Americans have arrived, and we're here to help with our great ideas.
Yeah, exactly. Run far, far away, Israel. Run. I can't stress that enough. Take the weapons, not the advice.
Yes, exactly.
What really rankled me, it's multiple things, and we'll get into it all. But, the things that really stuck out to me. I'm sitting here, in 2024 and saying, what American successes, other than killing senior terrorist leaders? Is Iraq a success? Was Afghanistan a success? Is Somalia a success? Now, he doesn't mention Somalia. He's alluding to Iraq mainly and Afghanistan secondarily. And we'll get into this more later. He says, Israel waging a counterinsurgency. And is that an insurgency?
It is not. They are not fighting an insurgency. Hamas is a government in Gaza, and so they're fighting a terrorist state, a proto-terrorist state, or however you want to call it. Hamas has battalions of irregular forces and blah blah blah. These are not it's not an insurgency.
It maintained its own police force
right off the bat.
Right, maintained a government, took foreign aid I mean,
Gaza Ministry of Health, what a wonderful organization that is. It's really considered the gold standard throughout the world of, real pristine information.
And wonderful care, no doubt, as well.
Yes.
Unless you're Jewish, but
right.
You're not even allowed in Gaza anyway. This is a real head scratcher. So let's get into this. He's basically saying we had success in Iraq. I would state that we've had success tactically in some areas, the creation of the awakening and beating back Al Qaeda in Iraq during the surge. But those were tactical successes. They were not long-term successes. The Sons of Iraq, which was a sort of an awakening-like group. Remember, these were some of the groups that were in, insurgency groups that were fighting the U.S. and the Iraqi government, but they didn't want to be in the Al Qaeda camp. So they were empowered, given weapons and partnering with U.S. and Iraqi forces to fight Al Qaeda in Iraq. And they've had varying levels of success. But at the end of the day, we left in 2011 under General Petraeus was the CIA director, and he didn't object at any way, shape, or.
I think then Secretary of Defense Austin was this. Was he the commander?
Yeah, CENTCOM commander. Yeah,
CENTCOM commander. Yes. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, no objection from either. In fact, I believe General Petraeus. I believe he was at that time. No, he was rewarded with being CIA director. He was the head of Afghanistan at that time. Right. I might have that wrong.
He came into he relieved Stanley McChrystal after the whole Rolling Stone kerfuffle.
Exactly. And but zero objection.
That was great, by the way. That was, nothing like fighting a war and having to fire your 4-star general, and then pulling in a CENTCOM commander.
Basically a demotion. Amazing, right?
Yep. Yeah.
To lead. But it was needed. And listen, at the time, I believe I wrote about this. I did, actually. McChrystal had to go. He had no discipline over his staff.
Absolutely.
I took a lot of heat from people from saying that.
No, he had to go. And, you can talk about, his tenure inside of Afghanistan, blah, blah, blah. But what happened in that Rolling Stone article left President Obama with little choice. Yeah. And so he was, So then they brought, I was at CENTCOM at the time. I was underneath Petraeus, and all of a sudden I woke up one day and it was like Petraeus to Afghanistan. I was like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
And then he tried, and then, McChrystal had already kind of done some of the coin there, but he once Petraeus came, it was like, the Coindinistas were big and powerful. So, and a lot of the stuff, they tried it again.
Yeah. And how well did that work in Afghanistan? Again, varying degrees, right? It depended where.
Some places it was great. Some places it wasn't. It struggled mightily in the South and Southeast and East where the Pashtuns were. I did village stability operations, which was a special operations forces, one of their biggest things that they did in Afghanistan, to train the Afghan local police, which was basically, a very similar version of the Sons of Iraq program. And some places it was great. I was up in Kunduz for 3 months, and there were some really pretty good Afghan local police. And then in other places, not great.
Yeah, and particularly in the South and the Southeast, as you mentioned.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. And at certain points in time, when you were trying to do that, the Taliban was just like, we're happy to wait you out. And I have a sanctuary right over here, and I'm just going to let y'all build all this very nice stuff. It looks very nice.
Can't wait to get in there and kick my feet up on the table.
Look, Lieutenant and Captain Selber was on a provincial reconstruction team in Afghanistan and Iraq. And I built a lot of schools, a lot of mosques, some roads, and the Taliban really enjoyed those. And all that stuff, while it can, aid and reconstruction is great, if the enemy hasn't been defeated yet, he's going to use that stuff too. And, a lot of my stuff then became Taliban headquarters.
This goes to that meme, right? My tax dollars also at work here. And
yes.
It was, yeah. And you know what, look, I embedded as a reporter multiple times in Iraq from 2005 to 2008 and saw varying degrees of success and failure. The awakening in Anbar province, far more successful and effective because it was organized, well organized. It was all, the tribes all bought in, and versus southern Baghdad or the provinces in the Sunni Triangle areas and areas southeast.
Even in Diyala.
Yeah, Diyala.
I was there in 2010. It has varying levels of success. But then we decided to leave.
Well, there you go, Will. Yeah,
and then, the Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki was like, "Well, I see all these people. Now I'm going to go after them.
They look like enemies. They're Sunnis,
right? Boo!" And I remember Captain Will Selber. Again, he's making another return, sitting in conversations on the PRT in Diyala in 2010, right? Sitting, talking with Sons of Iraq commanders and them being like, if y'all leave, they're going to come after us and you better do something about it. And so I was like, I'm going to write a report. And the quote of my lifetime from the Sons of Iraq commander, "That's what you guys are good at, writing reports." And I was like, my God, that was savage. But he was right. And so he's like, it's not going to do anything. I was like, he was right.
Yeah, and that's it.
So we left him. Right? And what you saw in Diyala during that whole time before we withdrew was a mini preview of what was going to come when we completely withdrew, from Iraq. They were using the Shia hit squads to go after Sunni provincial council members all over Diyala. And, Maliki just kind of took that on a tour. And when we left, that's kind of what he did and hollowed out the Iraqi army. I mean.
Yeah. And you mentioned it, Will, time, right? Sure, we had success while we were there, while we were engaged. And General Petraeus knew this. And again, he never objected to the withdrawal from Iraq. He never objected to the withdrawal or to the withdrawal from Iraq and the pulling the plug on the surge in Afghanistan. But President Obama said, "You're going to get 18 months and then I'm bringing them home." And he said, "Fine, we can do this." And you also said it. And this is why I was sort of laughing over here on the end. The safe havens. It existed in Iraq. It existed from Iran and Syria. And you had foreign fighters coming in.
Yes.
Same thing in Afghanistan. Pakistan primarily, secondarily, but no less significant, Iran. And so they never addressed those issues. They knew those issues weren't going to be addressed. And yet he wants to somehow call this a success. Afghanistan is under control of the Taliban. And I argue Iraq is essentially an Iranian satrapy. I mean, that's success. Sure, some tactical success perhaps, but for him to try to push and say we had successes and Israel needs to follow him, yeah, that's a big mistake, and I strongly recommend the Israelis do more.
I cannot tell you enough that I would not listen to this article if I was an Israeli general officer. I appreciate your thoughts, General Petraeus, but we are not fighting an insurgency. We are fighting a terror state. Which is now what the Taliban is, right? If we were to go to war again against Afghanistan, we would be fighting a proto-terror state, right? I mean, because that's what they've become. And so the idea that somehow you're going to clear, hold, build, right? Clear, hold, build. That was the mantra. I am a proud graduate, Bill Raggio, of the Afghan and Iraq Counterinsurgency Academy. Somewhere in my certificate books, there's one of those of each. And I'm just telling you right now, if they try to do that stuff, they're going to get killed. Not only are they going to get killed, but whatever Gazan who is that's going to work with the IDF, I give him a week before he's snuffed out. And I'm being generous.
Oh, he'd be lucky to make it a leak. And Will, exactly. You need partners if you're going to, first of all, 100%. This is not an insurgency. It can't be viewed as such. We're calling it, you and I sort of came up with the term proto-terror state. I don't know. I'm sure there's some technical definition for what Hamas is. I don't know it, and it doesn't matter. But what I do know is it's not an insurgency. And again, you bring up the key issue. Even if this was, who would we work with? We need partners. We could name, who we could work with in Iraq, who we can work with in Afghanistan. Government officials, military officials, awakening and village stability operate. We could identify them.
Sure.
Go ahead, General Petraeus, name me one person. Name me a person who's willing to stick his neck on, Abdul Sattar, the head of the awakening. He was ultimately assassinated. He actually was assassinated while I was embedded with the Sons of Iraq in southern Baghdad. That was in I guess that was during the surge. Yeah, in September 2007. He stuck his neck out, and then when he died, his brother stuck his neck out, and the rest of the tribe stuck their neck out. We knew who they were. I could point to them. I could go visit them. I could sit down with them. I could see their guys with weapons on the streets. But General Petraeus also, this is also what bothers me about this. He makes it sound like it's counterinsurgency. What was that book about drinking tea? And remember this?
Yes, it was with three cups
of tea. Oh God,
I have it somewhere in my bookshelf.
Yeah, throw that in the trash, Will. Would you do me a favor?
Yeah, I got to keep it for historical sakes. Yeah. I got there somewhere, and right in front of me is my bookshelf of coin, and I have all because, look, I don't want to misrepresent here because I drank from the Kool-Aid and it was tasty, and I was like, look, damn it, we're just gonna go and clear, hold, and build, and everything will magically be all right. And you read these books, Learning to Eat Soup with a Knife.
Yeah, right.
The Counterinsurgency Challenge. There's tons of them. He wrote the Doctrine book, but like, who are you going to have tea with if you are a Jew in Gaza?
Yeah. And
because they didn't hate us, like the Iraqis and the Afghans did not hate us like the level of anti-Semitism in Gaza.
It's instilled in an entire generation. Hamas running Gaza since 2007, like full control of the schools. Mm-hmm. It's just, the 18-year-olds and under are indoctrinated. And, there's a poll out there that almost 60% of Gazans support Hamas. And people will, well, there's 40% who don't. What percentage of them support Palestinian Islamic Jihad or PLFP or other terrorist organizations, right? You might get down into the I hate them all, and that might be in the single digits. I'd love to see that poll broken out. It takes what, 5-10% of the population to maintain an effective insurgency.
And the idea that right now, while they still have battalions in Rafah, right, and they're you might have degraded some of the battalions, but they still have a fighting force throughout the country that's given the Israelis some challenges. That somehow this is the time when Hamas is may have been weakened, but is not over. That you're going to like try to bring somebody else up. No, you have to defeat these guys first, and then maybe you'll have a chance. I don't put it very high that somebody will be like, I'm tired of Hamas and what they've done, and me and my clan, I don't know, we'll stick up and be like, we'll do it. But like now, they're dead, and they won't last very long.
Is it going to be the Palestinian Authority? How well are they managing the West Bank? That's a hotbed waiting to explode. And there's attacks daily that are occurring there. They run the police. I actually, when I went to Israel, I think it was in 2018 or 17, went to a Palestinian Authority police station in one of the cities. It was a hot mess. Those policemen could not have been more hostile. I never wanted to get out of a place more in my life, at least when I was, and I've been to Ramadi in some of the worst times, Fallujah, the Haditha, Baghdad, freaking Mosul. Mosul, one of its worst times before the Islamic State took over. But at least I had squads of Marines and soldiers, armed, whereas we're going with on a bus with a group of people and some, those.
At least in Iraq and Afghanistan, you had a Western created army that was ostensibly supposed to be your partnering force. Right. Now, at different points in time, they partnered with different people. Yeah. I worked with the Iraqi police in 2006 in Baghdad. You know who they partnered with? Jaysh al-Mahdi.
I can't tell you how many times I saw Iraqi police vehicles with Sadr's picture right in the center. You've seen it, right?
Oh, yeah. They would take off. I would have Iraqi police, straight up. Why do you hate Muqtada al-Sadr? And pull, take off their shirt, and they're Iraqi police, and he have a picture of him on their T-shirt. Yeah, but at least like there were elements that you were like, okay, you have the Iraqi Special Operation Forces, you have these, the Sons of Iraq, blah 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 blah. You have these tribes, and even in Afghanistan, right? You had the Popolzai tribe, which were more aligned with Karzai, and you could find some in the east and southeast. It was harder because Haqqani and all that type of stuff. But at least like in the North and West, you had a lot of more people that were willing to play ball with the American forces. What part of Gaza would you say is the most pro Jewish state?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who wants to work with, who wants to be like the first person to raise their hand and be like, I'll do it. I mean, my goodness, that would be very brave and I would say reckless.
But that person better buy a parachute is all I got to say.
They better all have visas to live outside of the Middle East. I mean, they should have like somewhere, I don't know, somewhere in Northern Virginia and get a nice little house there with some of the other like, lobbyists. And maybe that's where they could go, but they're not going to make it in Gaza.
No, it's absolutely absurd. And look, I embedded with military trainers and police that were like, the police in Fallujah, man, they were going at it hard against Al-Qaeda in Iraq when I was there that was 2006. Iraqi Army going at it real hard against Al-Qaeda in Iraq and Mosul. And I embedded with, my God, my wife would kill me if she knew this, but she doesn't listen, so we're good. I actually went out with Iraqi troops without the trainers, right? If they all hated us, I'd have been dead, shot with an AK round and dead on the street.
Dump.
And they'd be like, we were in a firefight with Al-Qaeda and the American died, right? Like it wasn't,
it's a shame.
They were Kurdish. This was a mainly Kurdish unit, but I actually been with non-Kurdish Sunni units.
Right.
Even some of the Iraqi Army Shia units were pretty solid. Like, were we their favorite? I don't know, but like I watched them fight out. They didn't like Al-Qaeda in Iraq. So we had a common enemy that they were able to focus on. Okay. Again, I just keep going back to this, Will. General Petraeus, name me them. Is there a group? Is there an individual, a voice?
This is my favorite line. Let me read you this little part here. And there is no guarantee that Palestinians would respond positively to Israeli operations aimed at providing security and a better life. At the very least, that would take a great deal of time. How much longer? How much longer will the Israelis be forced to stay in Gaza to try to partner with Palestinians? I mean, how long would that take? Generations? Would the international community support that type of like the Israelis being in Gaza, working hand in hand with whatever force, basically as an occupying force? I mean, I'm just confused. I haven't seen the international community once say what we want, and what we demand of the IDF is for you to stay in Gaza longer and to reconstruct this place. Because I don't know, when the Israelis left in 2006, we gave them a lot of money for, reconstruction and all that type of stuff. It didn't seem to work out very well. They took that money and they built one of the most amazing tunnel systems anybody's ever seen.
Can you imagine if they just put that to good use? One of my favorite stories after the withdrawal was how Hamas like gleefully went and burned all the infrastructure that was Israeli built, greenhouses and things like that. And they were like, literally, I mean, dare I say, shitting where they eat. I mean, it's just this. I mean, and all of that aid money, I've heard the number 350 miles of tunnels. Gaza's what, like a couple of miles wide and, 8 miles. I don't know what the demand. It's not very big. Let's put it that way. Do you imagine if they could have put some of that to good use? Maybe only built 10% of the tunnels. That's what the Israelis are dealing with. And you're right, Will. Like, okay, so you're telling me the international community is screaming for Israeli occupation? That's what they want? It's not. I haven't heard that call yet.
I wonder what Israeli moms and fathers and sons and family members would think about their family members going over to live side by side with Palestinians in Gaza, to build a better relationship and a working relationship while a war is going on. Do you think that they would be supportive of that? Because I certainly do not. I just don't. They live next door to Gaza. We are far, far away from Iraq and Afghanistan, right? So like this idea that somehow that you can just give them some reconstruction money, they will then be automatically happy that that you're building a Walmart on the corner. And now, like, I've understood what capitalism means and I want to work with the Israelis for a better future. That's what we think would work, right? We think that like doing that would help people, but they don't view the world that way. And they're not interested in that. I mean, they'll take the money and, the Hamas will take that money and put it to use and then kill you with it. but it's not going to stop fighting.
I mean, look, Hamas couldn't be more explicit. It's in their charter, the destruction of Israel and and the return of the Palestinian people to the land they believe is their own. They won't stop for nothing else, but maybe we could coin them to death. It's actually
there's some that you can do some mosque repairs and just some. I mean, wells. I built so many wells and did many mosque repairs, and that was great. And I'm sure some people were really happy with it. And you know what? The Taliban won. How'd that work out?
Yeah, I can't express how dumbfounded I am, but that this article was actually written and that people may actually believe that this was a good idea, that there's something there. Look, the Israelis may as well attempt to team up with unicorns to secure Gaza. They probably have more success and they probably could find more of them. I have no doubt there are Palestinians in Gaza who don't like Hamas.
Yes.
Who probably provide intelligence on, the terrorist groups to Israeli intelligence. Now, they may be doing it for money or they may be doing it out of, legitimate. That's one thing to operate under the covers. It's another thing to stand up and say, no more Hamas. We have a different way because they're still buildings standing. They'll get thrown off them. There's still firearms in Gaza. They'll get shot in the head or they'll just disappear in some of those tunnels.
For this idea to take root, they have to kill a lot more Hamas. A lot more. Like so many more that like it's just a remnant of a group that, they're still around, but like there's more of us than them and they're not scary anymore. But like that's not there yet. And Rafah's still going on. The battalions might be, disbanded, degraded, all the Ds, whatever the right term is.
Degraded, defeated, decimated.
Whatever done. The DOD doctrine definition. Oh God. They have to kill more of them. Unfortunately. I'm sorry. I wish I didn't have to tell you that, but like there's more Hamas that has to be killed before we can start partnering with these magical Gazans who want to work with the Jews.
The people of Gaza need to realize that, there was an article, right? I forget, someone said something, or actually it was an Israeli minister or general said, the idea of Hamas will never be defeated. It was
Hagari.
Yes.
Spokesman, IDF spokesman.
IDF spoke, right? And I'm sitting here going, all right, look, I know what you're saying and I know what you mean. Mm-hmm. Yes, there are still Nazis today, but Nazism as a
legitimate ideology.
Yeah, right, that controls territory and runs a state doesn't exist because it was soundly defeated. We didn't start rebuilding.
Hamas can't have you have whatever comes next, and I don't know what comes next, has to have somewhat of a monopoly of violence in that area. And right now, Hamas is the group that has more of a monopoly of violence than any other group in Gaza. And like you're like, well, why has it taken so long? Why? It's like 9 months, 8 months, and just press the button and the Hamas will be ejected out of Gaza. Unfortunately, right? They've been planning for this for quite a while, and they launched a surprise attack that caught the Israelis off guard for various reasons. But the idea that somehow the IDF was going to pivot after getting caught, by surprise, and then just launch an operation that would defeat Hamas inside this tunnel network in less than 5 months. I mean, it's just absolutely impossible. Nobody could do it, especially the United States military, especially us.
Yeah, and look, the people of Gaza need to realize that Hamas isn't the future, and the only way that can be done is by being soundly defeated. That which takes time. I would argue that the IDF has restrained itself and has been restrained by the U.S. The border should have been closed immediately with Egypt. Then you would have
first move
full, a full blockade of Gaza, and then they should have. I question the IDF going into areas and leaving. I would just hammer and anvil it and go at it. And look, you don't intentionally kill civilians, but you can't worry about civilians, particularly when the civilians are on the side of Hamas. I mean, I'm sorry, and the other thing too about the insurgency idea here,
right?
Which I'm just going to say it. I've been to places in Iraq where the awakening guys or Iraqi soldiers or Iraqi policemen, after hours without Western eyes on them, took care of business. You said it. A lot of killing needs to be done. And who knows how to do that killing? And there isn't time for a courtroom. These are civil wars, really, more than they are, which are very uncivil, than they were insurgencies. But I'll accede to the term insurgency, fine. But those are the ugly things that happen that Western states don't want to get involved with. Name me.
Well, they don't want it. They don't want the world to see that they're involved with, because, I mean, look, when ISIS came back in Iraq, I mean, we wisely re-engaged to push these guys out, and it's not like the Iraqi security forces who were taking Mosul were bastions of human rights. I would just say that. I mean, there's just, they're going to fight their own way if it's going to be that way, and it's going to be ruthless, and it's going to be bloody, and that's what war is. This is just Will Selber. When you try to make war not about killing, you start going off the rails, and then you start fooling yourself that it can be something that it can never be. That doesn't mean that it's killing every time and killing your enemy all the time. But like, if you can't say that, then you're not being honest with yourself. And I've seen it for too long. It's like, we can, we don't have to kill all these guys. We can, reintegrate them. We can bring them in. We can give them a nice house, the Afghan Peace and Integration Program. We can give them a nice house. We can give them a plot of land. But if like the opposing side sees you do that, and like somebody steps forward and then they kill them, that reintegration is not going to happen. I saw it myself. Guys there were some absolutely some Afghans that didn't want to do the Taliban anymore, and they swore the oath and all the stuff that we did. And then eventually the Taliban, when they were patient, I see you. Thank you for self-identifying. In about a year, I'm going to get you. And they did.
We got your name. We're good. Like
when this rotation of Americans leaves and they forget about you and they forget about the promises they made, because they're leaving every year, 6 months, 3 months, we'll get you.
You'll be drawing down. President Obama said it. It's 18-month time limit on the surge.
Yes.
So, yeah, this is, it's an ugly side of war, and particularly uncivil wars. Things happen. I mean, I hate the argument, Will. I've heard this a million times since I started this job. Can't kill your way to victory. Mm-hmm. Sure, you can. You can do it. Do you have the will to do it? That's the real question. And that's what you say. You have to kill enough of them to defeat them. And that's just the harsh reality. This is war we're talking about. It's not 3 cups of tea and eating, soup with a knife. Those are platitudes. Look, I recognize there's some value within it, but at the end of the day, it just rankles me, because it makes people believe that waging a counterinsurgency is anything but killing. And it's, security has to come first. Then you could do reconstruction. Did we try to rebuild Nazi Germany before we defeated the Nazis? Did we try to build Imperial Japan before we defeated the Japanese? It's absolute madness to think you could do otherwise.
Yep. And like, I understand there is a understandable need to there's a lot of Palestinians being killed. There's, innocent, and we need to rebuild. Look at what's happened and all that type of stuff. I understand that is for Westerners. Let me put that, for Westerners who have completely divorced from reality of the last 20 years of war, who never paid attention. And all of a sudden, this is the first time in their lives that they've seen on the television what war happens, and that war is messy. It's an inherently human endeavor, and there's going to be emotions around it. It's about killing, that they automatically I don't like that, and I want the capitalism, and I want the peace. Unfortunately, if you do that before the enemy's defeated, he will just destroy all the stuff that you gave him, take your money, take your humanitarian aid, make himself stronger to kill you again in the next round.
No, absolutely correct, Will. We've gotten away. We want to fight a kinder, gentler war.
Yes.
We want to, a post-war war. I always joke it's, we want McWar, right? We want quick and easy, right? You pull up to the drive-through, you grab your victory, you munch it in the car, you toss the bag out the window on your way home, and then boom, it's all done. And meanwhile, your adversary is sitting back, as you wisely note, Will, patiently waiting, watching, plotting, and realizing that we don't have the time and the attention, the will, or even the understanding of what warfare is and what it means and how it can and sometimes must be brutal. This is, look, it's hard for democracies to fight long-term wars, but maybe we should consider not doing things like waging counterinsurgencies if we don't have the will to commit to them. And what we really shouldn't be doing is telling people to fight counterinsurgencies when they're not even in an insurgency situation, because that is madness.
I think the last 20 years or more, I would, throw in Vietnam in there. I mean, maybe some of our partners know more than we do about the enemies they're facing because they live next to them and they grew up with them. And maybe we should, I don't know, allow them to fight the war that they want to.
Yeah.
Yes, like don't do mass executions. Please don't do that. Aim at this way. But like at the end of the day, like that's where they live, and they know these people much better than we do. And if we're gonna ally with them, it would be better if they just took our money and our weapons, and they were like, "This is what we're gonna do. Thank you so much, and we really appreciate your help. We can wear an American flag while we do this if you'd like or not. But like your advice in Afghanistan, in Vietnam, times in our, I've seen how this show ends, and it's not good.
Yeah, the ending of these movies sucks. I can't stress that enough. No, Will, I couldn't agree with you more. This is utter. I just keep going back to this is just madness. To try to push this on the Israelis. What would our response be if, let's just say, Mexican drug cartels launched a proportional attack like on the Israel? What is it? 30,000 Americans killed, thousands of Americans drug across the border and kidnapped. Would our response be, well, really need to think about how do we partner? We need to rebuild, Juarez and
right.
These areas, it's they're just not, it's about, got to bring them democracy and bring them a Walmart, as you note. Maybe it's about healthcare. I think our response would be, maybe it wouldn't, Will. Maybe it wouldn't.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, this is just, we talk about this a lot. I think we have on this podcast at different ones, is that the people have they don't understand war anymore because they don't have to. And they have, the all-volunteer force and has basically excluded the population, and it's happened in the West and in Europe as well. Only a few people have to serve, and not many.
And to
people
be from military families,
and from military families, and understand what happens in war. It's not like somebody presses a button and then the missile flies through the window. It only hits the bad guy because whatever movie you've watched. And so, like, when you have a fundamental misunderstanding of what war is, you're going to fool yourself into believing fairy tales. And the fairy tales make us feel better about ourselves. Look at those schools that we're doing, and look at all the hospitals we're building, except when they go boom.
Look at the children with those backpacks stuffed with school supplies. And boy, the water flows from the wells. And we built a mayor's office and a police headquarters, which are now occupied by the Taliban or Shia militias. You mentioned too, Will, right? We partnered with groups in Iraq to fight the Islamic State. A lot of them were militias who are attacking us to this day. That's the other reason why I look at what Petraeus said here and just shake my head. But look, Will, I'm going to give you the last word on this. Let's close this out. I think we beat this drum hard enough, and the horse is not only dead, but we flayed it. And
it's look. I read the article on General Petraeus. I would just say every time he says, what happened in Iraq or Afghanistan or the partners that they were able to do, and just ask yourself, with who is that going to pertain to in Gaza? Which group are the Israeli Defense Forces going to be able to pivot and work side by side with to create a better, more prosperous, stable Gaza? If you know who that group is, I would love to hear it, because I don't know who that is. But that's the problem in this whole equation. Even if it's not an insurgency, but even if it was, there is no partner. I wish there was. That'd be great. I'm sure the Israeli Defense Forces wish they could just like do a nice little handoff to somebody. That way they can really focus on Hezbollah, right? But doesn't exist. There is no running back to hand the ball off to run forward for you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Will. I could just imagine Israeli generals reading this and at least I hope, right, and going,
right,
who is that? And ultimately they have to be laughing.
Who knows? 4 stars tears a lot of weight.
I always say, I think one of the qualifications to keep 4 stars on your shoulders is you have to be a little stupid. There are exceptions to that rule, and there are notable exceptions to that rule. But I think in general, so yeah, hopefully the Israeli generals aren't pondering this and just dismissing this outright. But they may not be the problem. It could be the Israeli politicians who ultimately look at this and say, who are we going to work with in Gaza? And hopefully they're not wasting any energy on that.
So I have a quote, if you don't mind.
No, please do.
Please. So it's from Harry Truman, and he's talking about MacArthur. I fired him because he wouldn't respect the authority of the president. That's the answer to that. I didn't fire him because he was a dumb SOB, although he was. But that's not against the law for generals. If it was, half to 3/4 of them would be in jail. Harry S. Truman,
Will, how did I never hear that?
Yeah.
I think I may be a Truman fan. Who knew?
Well, I mean, look, Truman was in the military. He understood that just because you have the rank doesn't automatically mean that you know what you're talking about, because he served and everybody served. And so they don't look at the stars and they don't just like fawn. And they're like, oh my goodness, the 4-star has spoken, right? Some of them are great and they've done a lot of great stuff, not all the time. But like, it doesn't automatically equal wisdom.
3/4 of them would be in jail. Oh, Harry Truman. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah.
Will, thank you so much. Excellent discussion today, and I look forward to our next one.
All right. Thank you so much.
And thanks, everyone, for listening to today's episode of Generation Jihad. Just a reminder, you can listen to us on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Please subscribe to Generation Jihad and leave us a review, preferably a positive one, but only if we earned it. Thanks again, and we'll see you all again real soon.